Hello, my name is John, and today we'll be reading When Normality Became Abnormal by Victor Davis Hanson on American Greatness, June 16th, 2019. Donald Trump is many things, but one thing he is not is a defender of the 2009 to 2016 status quo and accepted progressive convention. Since 2017, everything has been in flux. Lots of past conventional assumptions of the Obama-Clinton-Romney-Bush generation were as unquestioned as they were suspect. No longer. Everyone knew the Iran deal was a way for the mullahs to buy time and hoard their oil profits, to purchase or steal nuclear technology, to feign moderation, and to trade some hostages for millions in terrorists seeding cash, and then in a few years spring an announcement that it had the bomb. No one wished to say that. Trump did. He canceled the flawed deal without a second thought. Iran is furious, but in a far weaker and eroding strategic position with no serious means of escaping devastating sanctions, general impoverishment, and social unrest. So a desperate Tehran knows that it must make some show of defiance. Yet it accepts that if it were launch a missile at a U.S. ship, hijack an American boat, or shoot down an American plane, the ensuing tit-for-tat retaliation might target the point of Iranian origin, the port that launched the ship, the airbase from which the plane took off, the silo from which the missile was launched, rather the mere point of contact, and signal a serial standoff, 10-to-1 disproportionate response to every Iranian attack without ever causing a Persian Gulf War. Everyone realized the Paris Climate Accord was a way for elites to virtue signal their green bona fides while making no adjustments in their global managerial lifestyles at best. At worst, it was a shakedown both to transfer assets from the industrialized West to the developing world and to dull China Western competitiveness with ascending rivals like India and China. Not now. Trump withdrew from the agreement, met or exceeded the carbon emissions reductions of the deal anyway, and has never looked back at the flawed convention. The remaining signatories have little response to the U.S. departure, and none at all to the de facto American compliance to their own targeted goals. Rich NATO allies either could not or would not pay their promised defense commitments to the alliance. To embarrass them into doing so was seen as heretical. No more. Trump jawboned and ranted about the asymmetries, and more nations are increasing rather than decreasing their defense budgets. The private consensus is that the NATO allies knew all along that they were exactly what Barack Obama once called free riders, and justified that subsidization by ankle-biting the foreign policies of the United States, as if an uncouth America was lucky to underwrite such principled members. Again, no more fantasies. China was fated to rule the world, period. Whining about its systematic commercial cheating was supposedly merely delaying the inevitable or would have had bad repercussions later on. Progressives knew the communists put tens of thousands of people in camps, rounded up Muslims, and destroyed civil liberties, and yet in woke fashion tiptoed around criticizing the other. Trump then destroyed the mirage of China as a westernizing aspirant to the family of nations. In a protracted tariff struggle, there are lots of countries in Asia that could produce cheap goods as readily as China, but far fewer countries like the United States that have money to be siphoned off in mercantilist trade deals, or the technology to steal, or the preferred homes and universities in which to invest. The Palestinians were canonized as permanent refugees. The U.S. embassy could never safely move to the Israeli capital in Jerusalem. The Golan Heights were Syrian. Only a two-state solution requiring Israel to give back all the strategic borderland it inherited when its defeated enemies sought to destroy it in 5 prior losing wars would bring peace. Not now. The Palestinians for the last 50 years were always about as much refugees as the East Prussian Germans or the Egyptian Jews and Greeks that were cleansed from their ancestral homelands in the Middle East in the same period of turbulence as the birth of Israel. Occupied land more likely conjures up Tibet and Cyprus, not the West Bank, and persecuted Muslims are not found in Israel, but in China. Suddenly redeemable, an aging population, the veritable end to U.S. manufacturing and heavy industry, and an opioid epidemic meant that America needed to get used to stagnant 1% growth, a declining standard of living, a permanent large pool of the unemployed, an annual increasing labor non-participation rate, and a lasting rust belt of deplorables, irredeemables, clingers and crazies who needed to be analyzed by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. At best, a middle-aged deplorable was supposed to learn to code or relocate to the Texas fracking fields. Perhaps not now. In the last 30 months, the question of the Rust Belt has been reframed to why, with a great workforce, cheap energy, good administrative talent, and a business-friendly administration, cannot the United States make more of what it needs? Why? If trade deficits are irrelevant, do Germany, China, Japan, and Mexico find them so unpleasant? If unfettered trade is so essential, why do so many of our enemies and friends insist that we almost alone trade fairly, while they trade freely and unfairly? Why do not Germany and China argue that their vast global account surpluses are largely irrelevant? Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat, New York, assured us that the world would be suffocated under greenhouse gases within 12 years. Doom and gloom prophecies of peak oil warned us that all our oil reserves would dry up by the early 21st century. Former Vice President Al Gore, Democrat, warned us that our port cities would soon be underwater. Economists claim Saudi Arabia or Russia would one day control the world by opening and closing their oil spigots. Not now. 3 million more barrels of American oil are produced per day just since Trump took office. New pipelines will ensure that the United States is not just the world's greatest producer of natural gas, but perhaps its largest exporter as well. Trump blew up those prognostications and replaced them with an optimistic agenda that the working and middle classes deserve affordable energy, that the United States could produce fossil fuels more cleanly, wisely, and efficiently than the Middle East, and that ensuring increased energy could revive places in the United States that were supposedly fossilized and irrelevant. Normal is utilizing to the fullest extent a resource that can discourage military adventurism in the Middle East, provide jobs to the unemployed, and reduce the cost of living for the middle class. Abnormal is listening to the progressive elite for whom spiking gasoline and power bills were a very minor nuisance. Changing roles. Open borders were our unspoken future. The best of the Chamber of Commerce Republicans felt that millions of illegal aliens might eventually break faith with the Progressive Party of entitlements. The worst of the open borders lot argued that cheap labor was more important than sovereignty, and certainly more in their interest than any worry over the poor working classes of their own country. And so Republicans for the last 40 years joined progressives in ensuring that illegal immigration was mostly not measured, meritocratic, diverse, or lawful, but instead a means to serve a number of political agendas. Most Americans demurred, but kept silent given the barrage of racist, xenophobe, and nativist cries that met any measured objection. Not so much now. Few any longer claim that the southern border is not being overrun, much less than allowing a non-diverse million illegal aliens in 6 months to flood in the United States without audit is proof that diversity is our strength. The Republican Party's prior goal was to slow down the inevitable trajectory to European socialism, the end of American exceptionalism, and homogenize globalized culture. Losing nobly in national elections was one way of keeping one's dignity, weepy, wounded fawn style, while the progressive historical arc kept bending to our collective future. Rolling one's eyes on Sunday talk shows as a progressive outlined the next unhinged agenda was proof of tough resistance. Like it or not, now lines are drawn. Trump so unhinged the left that it finally tore off its occasional veneer of moderation and showed us what progressives had in store for America. On one side is 2020 socialism, Medicare for all, wealth taxes, top income tax rates of 70 or 80 or 90%, a desire for a Supreme Court full of wise Latinas like Sonia Sotomayor, insidious curtailment of the First and Second Amendments, open borders, blanket amnesties, reparations, judges as progressive legislators, permissible infanticide, abolition of student debt, elimination of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Bureau and the Electoral College, voting rights for 16-year-olds and felons, and free college tuition. On the other side is free market capitalism, but within a framework of fair rather than unfettered international trade, a smaller administrative state, less taxation and regulation, constitutionalist judges, more gas and oil, record low unemployment, 3 to 4% economic growth, and pressure on colleges to honor the Bill of Rights. The new normal. The choices are at least starker now. The strategy is not, as in 2008 and 2012, to offer a moderate slowdown of progressivism, but rather a complete repudiation of it. One way is to see this as a collision between Trump, the proverbial bull, and the administrative state as a targeted precious china shop, with all the inevitable nihilistic mix-up of horns, hooves, and flying porcelain shards. But quite another is to conclude that what we recently used to think was abjectly abnormal 20 years ago has become not just normal, but so orthodoxically normal that even suggesting it was not was judged to be heretical and deserving of censure and worse. The current normal correctives were denounced as abnormal, as if living in a sovereign state with secure borders, assuming that the law was enforceable equally among all Americans, demanding that citizenship was something more than mere residence, and remembering that successful Americans, not their government, built their own businesses and lives, is now somehow aberrant or perverse. Trump's political problem then may be that the accelerating aberration of 2009 and to 2016 was of such magnitude that normalcy is now seen as sacrilege. Weaponizing the IRS, unleashing the FBI to spy on political enemies and to plot the removal of an elected president, politicizing the CIA to help to warp U.S. politics, allying the Justice Department with the Democratic National Committee, and reducing FISA courts to rubber stamps for pursuing administration enemies became the new normal. Calling all that a near coup was abnormal. And let us hope that most Americans still prefer the abnormal remedy to the normal pathology. This video is a production of School of the White Crane. Hi, my name is John Brooker. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. And please share this video with family, friends, and on social media. May God richly bless you, my beloved.